Okay, I'm Ed Witzke from Witzke Building Inspection Services. I've done this kind of work of pre-purchasing building inspections and guiding and helping home buyers into a safe landing. And I've been very successful at this business. And I think the reason I can put words to you of success is because my undergraduate training, I'm a UBC product, and with a graduate degree in history and also in architecture, practiced that profession for many years. So in that business of architecture, you do develop a theme of idea, a critical eye, knowing where to look at for details, straightness, levelness, plumbness, and all the things that architects and that profession talks about. And I was able to take that, what I've learned from my mentors, and many of them were from the old school of London, England, and Harvard, and internalize all that to now it gets a point in my life to help people. Rather than sitting behind drafting boards and drawing buildings up, I was able to take all my knowledge that I've gainfully been able to learn from my parents, who were, my mother was the architect, my father built houses, and they were trained in the old country. And so I've been able to digest all of that stuff, and here I am today, standing in front of a complex here in Vancouver. And this is, again, one of a very few number of buildings that have been very, very well built. I think this building is one of the very best of this time. Keep in mind it was built 15 years ago, this particular complex. And in people's minds, there was always this thing that said that, oh, 15 years ago, they're all rotten and they're leaky and they're falling apart. And you know what? You're right. Many of them are, and they're going through some dire consequences still to this very day, where these buildings still haven't been repaired properly because they've been designed so poorly. But in this particular situation, and there's a few others like this that are very well built structurally. They've had a very good engineering firm that's gone through at the original time, both soils engineer, structural engineer, and also an architect, very respected architect, who knew a lot about the old school of good roof slopes, good roof overhangs, water management, especially here in the wet West Coast where water management is so important. You can't have walls that are not flush properly, windows that are flush with walls, roofs that have no overhangs, poor water management throughout, and expect these buildings to perform and last long. They won't. And not only that, they get extremely expensive. So if I can put a word of advice out there, go to my website, Witzke, W-I-T-C-O, buildinginspections.com or edwitzke.com, and I think I'll show you very clearly on pictures that I took many years ago the importance of good roof overhang. Anyway, having said this, again, keep in mind straightness, levelness, plumbness, neatness, tidiness, quality, and details. Details in architecture are so important. If you've got good details, you're way ahead of the game in terms of a building that's going to give you good performance, good quality, lastability, durability, and viewability. And we have this as I stand in front of, I think, of one of the nicest buildings, or one of a very few, but they do exist. And that's one thing I must tell all prospective buyers. Good buildings here in the West Coast do exist. But keep in mind, something very simple. Details, details. Let me show you some of the details that are so important here that make this building work. It needs a little bit of cleaning, and they all do. It's like many of my dentist friends tell me, the tooth is excellent, the root is very good. It needs a little bit of flossing, a little bit of cleaning, drilling and filling, but certainly not extraction. Let's have a look. If we look around here at the detailing, we'll see that this is a vent that comes from the parkade where the car is parked, is done extremely well. If you look at the hinging, look at the grating, look at the surrounds, very, very nicely done. Look at the bollards. These are not pieces of as I tap the surface, pieces of plastic filled with concrete. These are professionally designed bollards with a lighting system in it. Furthermore, let's go look at the drainage of the building. The area that it's at is on a waterfront, and I insist when you are buying real estate here in the wet West Coast, real estate anywhere in the world, always keep in mind good views. Being near a water, on the water, it's a sextillionaire investment. Not a millionaire investment, billionaire, but certainly a sextillionaire investment, because this kind of property will always last in value, and also good resale value as well. Views of mountains, so important. And there's nothing like getting into complexes which are very poorly designed or very tight. You can't back your car out. No privacy or privacy. There's nothing. You want walkways. You want to see people. You want to see dogs, friends, and so on. Continue on with our detailing. Let's look at the flashing. The flashing is done extremely well. If you look, you can see that none of this stuff I'm able to, I'm reasonably a heavy set guy. I should be able to yank this flashing up with no problem. And as you can see, you can. And if you look at the gauge of the metal, look to see how this is all profiled. Further on, let your eyes do the walking here. Run your eyes over the surface. Notice how the corners have been nicely cut off. And also, particularly, look at the concrete mix itself. Despite it being green in color, and a little bit of water has gotten on because we've just had a rain here, the grade of the concrete, the color of the concrete is excellent. Obviously this has been done very professionally, this building, both in terms of the consultants that were involved, and also the designers, and also the other people that were involved during the process of its construction. I believe, by looking at the details here, that it was probably done by someone of the old school, European training, who knew how to supervise people in getting things done right. Let's come on with me and I'll give you another guiding tour here. Simple things like this. Here, as you're walking up the stairs, if you sort of crouch down, you'll notice that the rise is all completely uniquely the same. There isn't one nose of a step which is down further than the other. And if you run your eyes right dead on over the surfaces, and I can show you with my ruler, that all the nosings of the steps will touch the ruler. This is, and considering this is concrete, I'll tell you, this is a work of art. This is something that you generally don't see in today's construction. Let's look to the right again. We can see it's a better quality of vinyl siding. We're not able to pull it off. Now, this is a thing that I always like doing to vinyl siding, despite my fact that I have certain things that I've said in the past to the press about vinyl siding. If it's done well, it's done well. And you can see you can't pull any of this stuff off. In other words, it has just enough play in here to allow for expansion and contraction. And that's why when you look at this wall, also if you notice, it's not terribly wide. It's 3 inches in width. So there's going to be a lot more structure to this vinyl siding. And you can see that. The wonderful thing about this as well is, this being a townhouse complex, it is a strata. You'll see the width of the corridors, and also the sight vision, as I refer to them in architectural firms. You can see the blue skies right through the corridors. And I've always said, when you see something like that, it gives you that uncluttered, over sort of bearing of building after building, which unfortunately we see so much of here in the wet West Coast. Come on up with me, I'll give you another sort of look at things. Look at signage. A good thing for consumers to look at. If you see Sharpie, like the true sense of the word, Sharpie, meaning black pen, used for signage, I think it's maybe not a very good idea to consider looking any further in this building. But you can see it's all very nicely done, nice width, solid hand railing, very good exterior lighting here. That's the way it should look. And this again being marine sort of environment where you see a lot of tugboats out here, it sort of brings in a little flavor and into the overall theme of this. Come on over here and watch this. Lots of drains. Drains, when you're dealing with an open area like this, are absolutely must. You've got a drain here, and about 15 feet over there's another drain, another 15, and 15. So whoever thought about the drainage here did a fantastic job. The other thing you'll notice, it goes right into the drain. The drain is not high up, and the overall topography of it is that it will accept water. Have a look at this is always high maintenance, these areas. And so often in my line of work of pre-purchase inspections, I come across these things, meaning planters, are made out of wood. And a lot of that wood is rotten. And then of course the people in the strata are bitterly complaining about the fact is that they've got ants and carpenter ants and termites and every conceivable thing eating at their structure. Well folks, wood rots. It's digestive material for all these bug-like creatures that love wood. And me being born and brought up in Vernon, in logging country, believe me, I grew up with a logging pole in my hand, and logging trucks and caterpillars. So I have a feeling that there's one gene of me that's got a little bit of wood in me that can tell you a lot about it. It rots. And so this is rot-free. And even if you look as a prospective buyer into a strata, always look at the vegetation. Beautiful. You got the curly willow there. Beautiful. from plants and trees. And also you can see it's reasonably quite well kept, and like you don't see tissue paper and crushed beer cans and all the other things that almost can't even keep a straight face with you that you see in the morning after in some of these walkways. Let's move on a little bit further. And if you can keep in mind, what I always want to look at too is the kind of materials that have been used and how well they've been used and the details of these materials. You can have good materials, but they've been poorly put in place, causing problems. Let's have a look at a piece of wood. Look at the pattern of the nails. They've used the right nails. There's no rusting of these nails. They have done this properly. It's cut diagonally. Notice there's no twisting in the wood. Notice also that the rough looking texture of the wood. It's known as combed cedar. It's very expensive. This is not cheap stuff we're looking at here. And if you continue to look along here, there's no knots that are falling out. In other words, these trees where this wood comes from, they have not been traumatized, meaning when they fall a tree, depending on the time of year and the temperatures, the tree as it falls and onto the ground because of its weight, can be traumatized, and so that traumatizes the whole tree. So in other words, you get imperfect lumber and such. And again, yes, you and I see that at the lumber stores, and yes, you and I buy it, and it's no good wood is what I'm trying to say. So oftentimes you have to look to see where and how the wood looks like in appearance. So this is all excellent. Notice not big knots aren't falling out. These are small knots. And also notice again the pattern. And this is what I'm leading up to. Whoever built this complex definitely was old school trained. Some part of Europe, I know. The reason I know that is if you look at the pattern of the nails. You can take a measuring stick between that nail, that nail, that nail, that nail, and to one's surprise, it continues all along here. Nice adequate flashing over the wood here. And again, keep on looking up. It adds a little variety too. You've got wood, you've got the oval window up there, and also the fact that if you turn around to our left as we look here, it has a nice sort of weathered look. And you know what? To me, every building that I look at has to remind me of some part of the world. This area that I'm standing in front of here, as we look sideways, reminds me so much of areas of Boston and Massachusetts and London, England, and Holland and Germany and Spain. It's got very nice, unique architecture. I come here very early in the morning when I do these inspections. I usually start way earlier than what I'm here asked to come to, and I'm usually here anywhere from 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. And believe me, I start my interviewing, and I think that's one of the wonderful things about having a degree in architecture. And again, what I said earlier, I'm a UBC product. So I got trained equally as well as I did in architecture, the old school of how to do good research. And I've always enjoyed talking to people. And that's, I think, what you should do as buyers. Talk to people that live in the complex. It's amazing what they will tell you. Sometimes it's very good, sometimes it's not very good. And of course, the best people to talk to are the tenants. They have nothing to lose. They'll tell you everything and anything you'd ever want to know or not know. And much of that information you'll need to know when you make that decision. I've been here twice to this complex. And the first time, again, like anything, you are absolutely have to be thorough, and you begin to question everything. This is now my second time. I did not have the opportunity of looking at the plans because they weren't available. And of course, I signed this building off as a 10-10-10. Now the prospective purchaser in another complex is buying another part of this complex, and the owner was able to provide us with plans. Plans are so important. The story behind this is I wrote out as a 10-10 building the first time around. I figured, oh no, and the second time around, of course I didn't know it was this address because it had a different street name. And I figured looking at the plans, and you better believe it's going to get a more of a 10-10 than it did the first time around. And so it's all beautifully prepared. Plans are important. Keep in mind we're near a river, and so you often want to make, you're always going to get subsidence, you're always going to get movement, you're always going to get settlement of soil. So it's really important to know who the engineering firms are that were involved in the geotechnical aspects of this and also the structural aspects. These engineers that were involved with this complex were extremely well known. They've been doing this for a long time, and they've done, I must say, top notch in terms of their mathematical calculations for stress and all the things that engineers talk about has taken place in this complex. So as we speak here, it's still very much a very positive, no quiver to my thumbs, 10-10.